IVM.
Welcome to Audio Gyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Sajid Wajid Sheikh with us on Audio Gyan. He's one of the most sought after designers in India. Sajid is a self-taught visual artist specializing in illustration and design. He uses a visual language of shape, form, color, and line to create a composition which may exist with a degree of independence from visual references in the world. He has worked for firms like Umbrella Design, Contract Advertising, and on clients which includes like Google, Yahoo, Adidas, Red Bull, Elle, to name a few. And today we are here to discuss about illustration and more importantly, lines and faces. So thank you, Sajid, for giving your time. And it's a real, what I can say, it has been a long chase, almost a year long. But finally I have you. So thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you for having me here, man. I'm glad this happened.
Yeah, it's very interesting for me personally as well, and within my network and people whom I've been following on Instagram and looking at your work. So it's very interesting to document your thoughts, at least, especially in the context of being abstract, because your work is slightly towards that. I'm very what you can say, like a second standard student when it comes to illustration.
That's my target audience in a way.
Okay. So I want to start off with a slightly philosophical question, which is, what does like abstract art mean to you? I know it's a very tough one to articulate also because it's abstract. So what exactly goes in a mind of an artist, or for you that matter, when you're drawing, which is slightly abstract, if you can articulate that?
So like from where I come from, I'm a self-taught artist. So I understand things like if it's in front of me, say for example, if it's abstract art, I want to really understand it. So I understand it from a very non-typical point of view. And then I sort of understand it because I'm also an artist. So I can really explore those territories and see what it means to me. Then I sort of, on those whatever stuff I've made, on those grounds, I make my own understanding of what abstract art is for me. So,
and is this a preferred way, or?
I mean, it's not a preferred way. I mean, I can't. It's my way. I've sort of figured it out while being an artist who didn't really understand what it is initially to begin with. So yeah, it was like a personal exploration and like self-studying of what this actually means. There are a lot of cool YouTube videos that I sort of would put on while I was working on, that really inspired me to be how I can push myself to be like a different artist in that sense. So it really helped me in that way. So that learning happened on the go.
No, but when you say that you try to, so even I'm not able to articulate this, but so if you see an abstract painting, right, what goes into a mind of a lay person as opposed to an artist?
Sure.
If you can, because you have seen both the worlds.
So the immediate thing that a layperson would want to do is understand it. And that's one door to explore something, is understanding it. There are multiple doors for you to feel something in a very different way. Like, though you won't understand something, but you would feel its presence around you. So say for example, if it's darkness, you don't really understand anything around you, but you feel the presence of a lot of things around you. So I think a lot of people go through that, they want to understand what it is, because India especially, or maybe in the entire space of how throughout history, art was only catered to us with figurative drawings, with people doing something for people to understand it better. And then over a course of time, people got bored of it. There was no end to how realistic it could get. It went anti. And then it became more of a space where it became anything can be art, with Dadaism coming in play. So it really bent everything. And I feel with a layman, they want to understand it from that point, and an artist understands it from the art history point of view. So you really understand who's bending boundaries of doing art and to what degree as an artist. But a layman wants to understand it in a very different way with figures, and abstract they don't understand, so they sort of start like pushing it away. But a very good understanding, a very good takeaway from abstract art is basically when you start understanding or like trying to understand what abstract art is, the world around you becomes very beautiful. Like you're walking down the lane and you'll find a empty wall. You would just love it for its beauty, you know? Because sometimes, like, if you start looking at, say, Rothko's work, you know, I mean, it's my point of view. So if I look at Rothko's work, it's like these flat colors. And if I'm walking down the lane and I find these like marks made on the wall, I just appreciate it because I've started appreciating the abstract. So the world around me becomes very beautiful.
Wow. And I'm guessing it needs to be an acquired taste, right? You have to keep continuously consuming this sort of abstract,
Yes.
or can abstract, like for a first time person who looks at something, does he think of the form, composition or anything, or it just feels nice? Because my sort of mentor / friend, he's from JJ, and he does like paintings which are very circular in nature. He just plays around with circle and colors. And maybe
sort of spiraling
10 years back, I just asked him कि ये क्या बना है, मतलब I cannot understand this and what is it? अच्छा दिख रहा है क्या? And I said yes, that's it. So he couldn't go beyond that part to explain me what it is.
Got it.
So since then I've been just trying to struggle and ask different artists that what is it like? Why does it look good, or why does it? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, like say when you're talking about acquired taste in anything, it is a personal choice again. Like a lot of people don't really choose to like acquire that taste, but if you do, like just it's not that difficult. You just start liking something, and then like see, the thing is, art in general is a very innate thing in us. Like a 2-year-old kid would be like sketching and stuff, or like making some marks on the wall or somewhere. So it's a very natural thing that happens, and it's in us. So we just have to tap into those doors to open them. So it's not very difficult to just give it like a 2-second mode to look at something, because say for example, a lot of work that other people generally see who are not really interested in art wouldn't really go to a gallery because it's no interest for him or her. But on Instagram, like it's just out there. So a friend of, say for example, if your some random friend makes some artwork and he puts it, though you didn't want to see it, but you've seen it because it's on the open platform. So just spend like 2 more seconds to see what it is and just hold it. I think just in doing that, you would start opening doors for like, staring at it for like a longer time. And by doing that, it just becomes like a taste that you can sort of acquire anytime. It's just like a matter of seconds.
Wow, that's an interesting way to put it, actually. So the next thing which I want to ask you is slightly, again, philosophical, because this entire conversation...
No, I love philosophy, man. Like, I mean, I dig it.
So does an artist need to be a rebel? I mean, this is again trying to, because I come from a classical sort of school of thought, at least, that parampara, or like in music, right? There are gharanas and traditions.
Sure.
So what I've seen is, I've seen both the schools, and the more recent I've seen the other school, but initially it was all classical. So you just follow what has been told by legends. There are certain benchmarks which are put. On the other side, you have artists like you or Hanif, or there are different people doing some work which is not really traditional. They are exploring boundaries.
Sure.
They are like expanding boundaries of what art can be.
Sure.
So what goes there? Like,
sure. Yeah, I know
you
exactly
got what I'm saying. Right?
Yeah. So how I would put it is basically people who are trained artists know their craft. Like if I give you a motorcycle and you know how to write it, you'll write it in a very different way. Then you give it to some kid who's never rode a bike. He'll write it in a very different way. And if you see the difference of a person who's like learned it through like the gharanas and everything, through somebody who's doing it just out of like, curiosity, you can literally see that difference. So what happens there is basically...
But there is no right or wrong, because
There is no
initially
right or
I had
wrong.
this
There
mindset
is no
कि
right
नहीं
or
यही
wrong.
सही है and
Yeah.
this is what this you learn and come.
Yeah.
That was my
No, the
approach.
thing is, it's just channelizing the energy, So like, if you're a trained person, you'll channelize in a trained way, which is better, which is tried and tested, But if you have that energy and you want to throw it out, and there's no other way, and you've not gone to like, a traditional gharana way, it'll still come out of you, because it is somewhere, you can't really stop it. It's just projecting outwards. And you don't know how to project it. It can project on anything. A lot of people who have that energy, maybe when they were kid, had a guitar in front of them. They started projecting it on the guitar, And people who are like say for example me, when I was a kid, like I never had a guitar or anything around me. Only things I had was like papers and pens. So I started projecting it on them. So for a self-taught artist, you understand that there is that energy that everyone has, but like the ways of channelizing them is different. So you figure out your own ways in a different way, Like that's something I would like simply put it.
No, but this channelizing energy, or for that matter energy, are you saying, is it in particular with artists, or it is across human race?
It is across human race for sure.
So what differentiates when people become creative? Like, is there some sort of a rebel, like this is the traditional way, I want to do it the other way around, or is it this is some ad hoc, I want to learn classical style?
Yeah.
Is
So the
there an
rebel-
inherent rebel?
The inherent rebel, see, rebels are people who know things, sometimes. Like,
Wow.
so there are other people who don't really know anything about like what is going on, and they just do because they want to do it. So I think there is rebel only when there is somebody who knows what rebel is.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah.
mind blowing. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so basically, it's again in that space where there is no right or wrong. There is no rebel or there is no anti-rebel or anything of that sort, if that word exists. But it is. And it is. That's it.
Wow, this is getting more abstract. Okay, now coming to a more practical aspect of what you have been doing, and at least what I have been following your work. On Instagram, you post a lot of progress work, or
Sure.
in fact, a lot of videos where you're actually drawing something.
Yes.
Right? So after looking at that, I was really curious to know, and also you must know Sarang, right? Sarang Kulkarni?
Sarang, yeah.
From
yeah.
Type.
Yeah.
So we were also discussing, and I wanted to just understand this, that is there a point in time that you exhaust out of all the combinations that are possible with one particular abstract or one particular art form? Say, for example, you're working with faces, which we'll
Yeah.
come back to it later in detail. But say you're drawn a face.
Yeah.
Do you think 50 years out, 100 years out, if you live and if you keep drawing those faces, you will run out of your combinations?
No.
And so can you elaborate on
Yeah.
that? What happens there?
So basically what I'm trying to do is, it's again like if you break down the art, it is equations. So like the equations is, so for me, how I make my stuff is basically equations. It's more of ideas what I'm like making out, which is not really bound by the end result of it. I just like doing what I'm doing right now, and the end result happens to be whatever it is. So what I do is basically equate it, and equate it is basically when I have to make a face. So it is just these 5 things, which is basically 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. How much is it? 2 eyes, no. 1 mouth, 1 nose, 2 ears. It's 6 of these things.
Yeah.
Okay. And within these 6 of these things, it's a lot of things to play with. So you can create endless combination permutations of it in different
But
mediums.
are you serious when you're like, are you strict in a sense saying that endless combinations?
Sure, yeah. It can go,
Wow.
yeah, it can go endless. Like say for example, if I have to give you an example, if I have to illustrate it for you.
Yeah, please.
So what I'll do is basically take one eye. I start off with like an eye. And then I have like 4 other things to compose it with. So I'll put a nose right opposite it, where it's not like in a traditional way. I'll put it up like on top of the eye. So I have 2, now out of 2 I have 4 more things. Like there are these 2 ears. Where do I put them? Where I have this mouth. Where do I put this? So I have this entire space where I can put it anywhere. And it like I just randomly put it. So it makes a different kind of work that I'm also like, exploring. It's more of an inquiry. It's more of a say for example, way of putting certain things, laying out. I just try laying these things out in a different combination. So that can go endless. So say for example, when you've reached a point where you don't know where to go from, so you start multiplying them. Like say you start multiplying the eyes. You can do it because you're in the abstract sphere and there's no right or wrong.
Correct.
So 2 eyes become 3 eyes. Okay, and then 3 eyes I have like a bigger control of, I can put the entire thing in that eye.
But yeah, exactly. This is the subtle point, right? So initially we started with 6 elements.
Yeah.
And those were individual elements,
Sure.
right? So left eye, right eye, whatever you want to call it, but 2 eyes.
Yeah.
Now you have increased the number of eyes.
Yeah.
So actually somewhere you got exhausted with the limited
No.
set of things you have, right? Or
No, because I'm the creator also. I'm not laying it out. I'm creating them. So I'm the creator. I can create anything. I was just putting boundaries to myself earlier for people to understand.
Wow.
And then when everyone's sort of getting it, you add more elements to it. And it's endless. There is this word for it. It's called Nirankar Nirakar, which means there is no akar to it and there is no shape to it. So you take it from there and you put it out.
Kabir's philosophy, yeah, maybe before
It is,
that,
yeah. It is an Indian thing, for sure. It is the universe, basically.
Wow.
So you take it out from, it just appears. You don't have to take it out also. It just appears in front of you.
I don't take breaks, but yeah, I think we should take a break here and just. But yeah, I was just kidding. Cool.
I hope I'm making like.
No, I am. Yeah, you're making complete sense. It's just that I'm not sure whether I'm able to comprehend it or not. But there are a lot of dots which are joining in my mind, at least, because I've seen your work and yeah. So this is to the second last question actually, which is more towards one video which I saw on YouTube where you have given a small presentation. In that you said you balance both the worlds, and this I also spoke to Aniruddha Mehta, who's a common friend.
Yeah.
He suggested asking you this question.
Sure.
That you have this one side which is completely abstract and whatever you want to do and however you want to do, and you are the creator there.
Yeah.
On the other side, you also have a nice balance of doing commercial work, which is logos or some murals in Facebook and other places.
Yeah.
So how do you balance these two things?
Sure, yeah. So, like, to begin with, I actually started off as a graphic designer. And in making graphic design, I understood the foundations of art. So that was my first introduction to art as a visual medium. So I sort of understood and took that as a learning. And those learning is the same learning that I'm doing with my work. So you see that there is that connect to things. So at one point in time, like I have this I really love what I'm doing in the commercial space also. I mean, but I love doing my own stuff more because I'm more free here in that space. But in that, like right now, if you give me some work, which is a commercial space, I'll trip on it like in that space where I'm working on it like it's my work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know the rules basically, not like the rules, my rules that I've made for myself, and I can imply it on like anything. Like I can imply it on like the layout of this room, so I can start making work which is in the room. Then I can, like, so I didn't really find it difficult for me to like move from laying out to like making art to making like spaces.
So the boundaries are blurring for you.
Yeah, because there are no boundaries. It's the same thing.
No, but there is some constraint. There is some brief given by the
There is
client
constraints,
for-
yes.
Yeah.
But it's still the same thing. It's again like laying out. Like if you're in the room, architects are making layouts, where abstract is again compositions, which is again layouts. And like when you're in advertising, you're making creatives and you're making layouts. And your layout is your understanding of how you want to portray things, And every time, like, and in advertising especially, you can't really have one layout, Like you start becoming repetitive and everyone starts knowing who you are as a person, So in an advertising firm, you're an amazing guy if you can produce multiple layouts, So that understanding from doing commercial work has the same effects in the abstract world. So I love it like either ways.
So in commercial sense, so this is one question which I had asked Pavitra Dikshit in one of the earlier podcasts, that for clients you need to provide options, right?
Yeah.
Like ye layout hai, wo layout hai. But in creative side you probably don't need to create. So how does that work in your work which you do?
Sure. So say for example, how you make your reputation is what it is, So if you make your reputation of a person who knows his stuff,
It's
So
the
you
same
don't-
answer, credibility.
Yeah. You don't really have to go out with two options also sometimes. So say for example, recently this happened with me with NH7. So NH7's Supreet asked me to meet her for like some work. Didn't really tell me what it was. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll come see you. And I saw her and she was telling me about some installations and stuff. And then like gradually it went on to becoming a identity design project. So I was like, okay, cool, I can start working on it. And then I went back and she asked me to make a pitch. So I was like, okay, cool, I don't mind doing a pitch because at least I'll explore this part of it, which I wasn't going to do anyways otherwise. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll start doing this music festival, which is NH7. And I was really excited because I've seen my people who I really look up to doing that work. And I was like, dude, I have to do this, So I did it. And while doing it, I was thinking of multiple options. And then I told myself, like, at one point in time, the same thing that I tell myself when I'm an abstract artist, when I'm making my own work. I told myself, this is my vision of the festival. I can't have multiple visions. So I gave it full thought. And I was like, this is my vision. This is Sajid Wajid for you as a festival. And they liked it. They bought it.
Wow.
So that's where it is, like having your stuff together, as having your shit together.
It's not just about reputation. I think it's also about the conviction which you have from within.
Yeah, exactly.
Really,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every project you get, there is always a drawback to it. There is always a drawback to it. There's going to be money which is not sufficient. There's going to be time which is not epic. There's going to be something that's going to bother you. If you leave that away, if you mute it, you have this endless boundaries to like break. So, at the end of the day, if you're really loving what you're doing, you don't really want like a bad trip or a bad vibe to break it down. So it's basically that.
Wow. Sajid, I think you should get into spiritual talks also. It's very, very impressive. So, yeah, one last question. Actually, before that, I wanted to just ask you about Kona also. If you can just tell our listeners
Yeah.
what is it, and I want to know it personally as well, because I've just seen bits and pieces here and there on it.
Yeah.
So Sajid, can you tell us about to our listeners, what is Kona project about and what's happening there? Because I've just stumbled upon few posts on Instagram here and there.
Good, yeah.
And I've heard like few of my friends saying you have done some incredible work there. So what
Yeah,
have
I
you
mean-
done and what the project about?
Yeah, sure. So basically, what I did at Kona is something that I wanted to do like generally
Forever.
also. So it's basically something I was really interested in doing, opposed to like something that I didn't want to do. It was a client brief and stuff like that. It was something that I wanted to push myself and test my limits and see if I've discovered these things in my sketchbooks, can I go into this space which is actually a universe in its own self, you know. So I was ready to take that plunge. And what I did at Kona is basically it's a view of me inside my head and how much I can produce in that much amount of time.
And
So
what was the time, if you can give just small details about?
so I was confined in the room for like 7 days.
And no coming out.
I did come out like
Eat
for
and
the
stuff,
eat
yeah.
and like use the loo and stuff. But it was more of a very strict regime, like, you know, staying there, being there, can't really go out. And just being in that zone is what it was basically.
Wow, that's
So,
intense.
yeah, it was. I mean, I really wanted the intensity to go higher. But I mean, I just wanted to like start, you know, like without building it up too much. So what I did was like I confined myself in this room and like covered it grey. And it was again like a very spontaneous decision to make. Initially, I was going to do a different exhibition there, but because it wasn't like it was more of a force fit. So we were trying to figure out if there's another way to do something here in that space. And till that point, I was treating it as like, okay, I was like, it's my old 1-year-old work. I'm putting it here again. It's not going to be so nice. And then it just turned out to be this epic brief that I always wanted to do because I was talking to the curator and she gave me this full regime, full freedom to go like nuts. So I was like, okay, cool. I need one room which doesn't have any edges, and it shouldn't have. It should just be one color, and when you enter, you are almost entering a cocoon. So that was the idea of what I really wanted to do. But because like building that in like a day was impossible, so we turned it around however best we could, and we turned it around in this like cave-like thing. And then I started, and one day when the cave was ready, I threw everyone out, got all the art supplies, some 10,000 rupees artworks,
Art supply.
art supply. And I went in and I was like, okay, I asked this guy who works at street art to just give me food whenever I need. And I asked people to not disturb me. And I started doing it. And then after a point, it just became a natural thing. So
So you slept there.
I slept there, yeah. So, I mean, it was, for me then, I was discovering the space. And it was interpreting itself in a very weird way, and I was just discovering it because I use this approach of, you know, just drawing without getting this conscious mind out, just drawing with your subconscious, drawing with your subconscious to your unconscious to like every space. And I've discovered so many things in that room is not like beyond describable, you know.
Correct.
So I realized if there is muscle memory, there is also muscle, what do you call it? There's this word for it. There's this muscle memory, and then it becomes aware. It's muscle awareness. And every muscle became its own individual species working separately in a very different way. So while I was doing it, I was unearthing it. I was digging through it, you know. So it was right there, and I was just like scraping, like, you know, when you have the scratch cards in your phone for your recharge. So like when you scratch it, there is a number underneath. So I was doing that. I was just scratching the drawing out of that. And everywhere, I mean, if I spent more time on one angle, I would discover more and more stuff in it. Like I'd go deeper and deeper in it. And if I have to like really run through like one corner, I'd have different ways of doing it. So it was really interesting to see, like, you know, if I could. And move around and really be in that space of making things, which really, I would go back and laugh at it. Like, I would laugh at the creature
So
that
you
I
painted
made.
the ceiling, the
I painted the
corners,
ceiling,
everything.
Yeah.
So not 1 inch was left.
I mean, I've left room for like balance it. Like I
Okay.
didn't really want
No.
to.
But it's that is part of the artwork.
It is
itself.
the part of the artwork. So it is.
So you
every
walk on
corner.
the artwork when you come.
You
inside?
walk in, and the idea was to walk on the artwork, but because the dome couldn't happen, so we put mats on the floor so that people can sleep and look at the dome on top. So, and then it became more of a immersive space. And I also played like, so while doing that,
Were there lights inside?
there were lights inside, yes. So while doing this, I was also like, the process is also like something that led me to do this. So I had essence sticks which added to the smell of things. I started playing this music which Pranav from Street Art again. He just randomly walked in and he just put this Drupad, this old music. And while Drupad was happening for 7 days, I was getting like I became Drupad. And I was drawing with the rhythms and with music as my guide also. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask a very, very odd question, but do you smoke up and do this thing? Because it's okay. So Sajid, I would like to conclude with one last question.
I mean, this is off, but I mean, it does help.
Yeah.
But I can like, even
Because
if
all
I'm
your
sober-
work, frankly, either you smoke up or someone has to smoke up to understand it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's all
I'm-
psychedelic or whatever you call abstract or whatever. I can just give one label to it.
Yeah.
But it's just amazing. It just feels nice. You don't understand stuff, but it's just great.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
So yeah, Sajid, I would like to ask you one last and
Sure.
most important question,
Sure.
which I wanted to ask you from the time when I started following your work.
Yeah.
What's the fascination, if I may use the word? What's the fascination with faces?
Like I said earlier, like it is again like an equation for me. So it's that equation that I can like explore and like crack and like just play around with. What I'm doing is with like those faces again is basically eyes, nose, mouth and 2 ears. So I'm just playing with it, and that's something that I'm like. It's again like a play for me, Like sometimes a lot of people have their one old 8-bit game which is their favorite. Like how much ever like technology has progressed, they'll go back to that 8-bit Mario and like they'll play that because that's something that satisfies them, and then that's who they are. So it's my game. So I play with these eyes, nose, and like other stuff that makes it like into a cool looking like abstract like thing. So I like that, and that's again something that I enjoy doing. And
But
that's
why
what-
faces?
like I said, it's again that those equations. There's nothing particular to it. It is something. See,
No, you can
with faces.
probably.
With faces, what happens is it becomes also a key to become abstract. Without a lot of efforts. Like if you turn
No,
one
but I'm
eye-
just thinking aloud. You can probably pick up a mountain also, right? Or
Yeah.
a shore.
Sure.
Or anything like
Yeah.
why faces?
So
And I don't want to point out to the talk which you did on YouTube. Obviously, that's not the direction,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
any
I mean it helps me channelize a lot of things in me. I really like exploring the face of the a face is something that does describe the emotion in the best possible way also. You don't really have to struggle too much. Like you can just read somebody's face and understand that they're bored or what they're thinking. And it is one really simple exercise. You can with those eyebrows, you can literally turn like the face to an angry face, to a curious face, to somebody who's sad. So it is a very cool playground. Like you can turn these things, and the eyes can turn into this. Eyes can go here, and it's looking here. It's a very good play thing, like it's a game. So I like to play that game often in that space. So, and it is also a part of this thing called escapism. So what it does is like it really helps. I mean, say for example, if you're playing, a game, what it does is it takes you out of whatever headspace you are in, So no matter how much of a terrible headspace I am in, I can literally plug it out, put my game in, and I can play. So, and the more terrible things are, the more interesting my faces become. Because I'm really like, ignoring the outside. It's more of an escape for me, Like say for example, there are like 5, 6, 7, 8 people who have come to beat you up. And you're in this room. And what do? You can really think of those people who are going to like, fuck you up. Or else you can start living this moment that you are in this room. So I do that. So I start living in this room that I sort of make while making faces, which is really interesting and like just something that I love doing, So I do it.
Wow. Yeah. Definitely they are great, and I wish you all the best and keep doing such great work.
Thanks so much.
If people have to follow, I'm sure like almost all the listeners of AudioGyan must be following you. But yeah, if people have to follow you, Instagram, what's the handle?
It's Sajid Wajid Sheikh.
Sajid Wajid Sheikh. And where can they come and see some live work, as in like with feel or touch the work which you have done? Yeah.
So I'm doing the show by end of this month, which is a collaboration between me and this fashion label called Indigene. And what they do is like they take recycled cloth and they make fashion, really good clothes out of it. So I was wearing the t-shirt, like the jacket that they gave me while I was doing the painting also.
Oh, nice.
So it's a show that I'm sort of trying to make something with them.
It's in Bombay?
It's in Bombay. It's in Artisan.
Okay.
Yeah, at Kalagoda.
Cool.
Yeah.
So all the best for that.
Thanks so much.
It was lovely talking to you.
Same
and lot of food for thought, lot of questions more, and see where it goes. But I would like to have you again on AudioGyan,
sure,
probably
sure,
to discuss one of the case studies and just go deeper into it.
100%. Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.
Hello! It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round Is On Me, Gauri is joined by Shweta Nanda. They talk about the financial independence and how it is to be a woman entrepreneur. On Anish Thing, Anish welcomes ultra-marathon runner Shivani Gharat. Shivani shares her journey of how she ran her first marathon, the mindset of a runner, and what it actually takes to run a full marathon. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Akash and Shreyas talk about the Korean band BTS serving in the military and its repercussions. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Wing Greens and their latest acquisitions and about the Indian sexual wellness market. And on Shunya One, Sheila Datya is joined by Dinika Bhatia, CEO and founder of Nuttigritties. They talk about coming from a business family and Dinika's journey in creating healthy and guilt-free snacking. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting new merch out there for you. Also, do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. And do remember to spread the word about these shows and any other shows you might be listening to. Appreciate them, rate them and review them wherever you are listening to them. You can also check out all our other shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week. Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thanks guys, without you this would not be possible.
Do you often find yourself surrounded by conversations about Web3, blockchain, NFTs, DAOs? What are these terms and how do they affect our future on the internet? So many questions, but don't worry, we've got answers to all your questions. Hi, I'm Eklavya Bhattacharya, and on our show Future Proofing, we try to decode the impact of these future technologies on various industries with experts and tech enthusiasts. Tune into new episodes coming out every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app and the website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.